My son-in-law Warren sprinkled white powder into my soup when he thought I wasn't looking. I felt my heart stop as he leaned close and whispered, "You're already near the end, old man. Soon your land will be mine." I stared at my bowl, pretending not to notice, as he called me a useless old man right in my own home. He wanted me gone, fast and quiet. But he didn't know I kept the spoon he used and had been collecting evidence against him for months. I never thought I'd be fighting for my life against my own family. My name is Rhett Calloway, 67 years old, and I own 200 acres of prime farmland in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. This land has been in my family for 4 generations. My grandfather plowed these fields with horses, my father modernized with the first tractor, and I've worked this soil my entire life. It's more than property to me. It's my heritage, my legacy, and until recently, I thought it would be my daughter Amanda's inheritance. 5 years ago, Amanda brought home Warren Davis, a financial advisor from Richmond, with a winning smile and firm handshake. He seemed perfect, well-dressed, well-spoken, and he treated Amanda like she hung the moon. I was thrilled when they announced their engagement 6 months later. My wife Elaine was still alive then, and we hosted the wedding right here on the farm. 200 guests under white tents on the south pasture, with the Blue Ridge Mountains as a backdrop. It was the happiest day of Amanda's life. When Elaine was diagnosed with cancer 4 months after the wedding, Warren stepped up in ways I never expected. He drove her to chemotherapy appointments, researched experimental treatments, and sat with her for hours, just talking and keeping her spirits up. When we lost her 3 years ago, he was a rock for both Amanda and me. At least, that's what I thought. After the funeral, Warren suggested they move closer to help me manage the farm. They bought a house just 2 miles down the road. I was grateful for their company, especially during those first lonely months without Elaine. Warren showed interest in the farm's operations, asking questions about crop yields, equipment, and property boundaries. I thought he was just being supportive. One evening last spring, I was heading to the barn to check on a new calf when I overheard Warren on his cell phone behind the tool shed. He didn't see me as I paused, hearing my name mentioned. "The old man's farm is worth at least $3 million to developers," Warren said in a hushed tone I'd never heard him use before. "Prime location, plenty of road frontage. We just need to wait for the old man to kick the bucket, and it's our ticket out." I froze, my hand gripping the barn door. Warren, the son I never had, was discussing my death and property as if I were nothing more than an inconvenience delaying his payday. I ducked behind the barn as he ended his call, my mind reeling. That night, I didn't sleep a wink, replaying his words over and over. I decided not to confront him immediately. If I was wrong, I'd damage my relationship with my daughter forever. If I was right, I needed more evidence. So, I watched and waited, paying closer attention to Warren's behavior around me. The changes were subtle at first. Warren began asking casual questions about my will and estate planning. "Have you updated everything since Elaine passed?" he'd ask. "Amanda should know these things, just in case." Then came suggestions that farming was too much for me at my age. "You're pushing yourself too hard, Rhett. You should consider selling some acres. Enjoy your retirement." When I firmly rejected that idea, his tactics shifted. He started mentioning friends whose parents were comfortable and safe in assisted living facilities. He'd leave brochures for senior communities on my kitchen table, talking about how I deserved to be taken care of. Amanda began echoing his concerns. "Dad, I worry about you out here alone. What if you fell and couldn't reach your phone?" I recognized the manipulation, but played along, assuring them I was fine, while privately growing more watchful. Warren started inviting friends over a doctor who specialized in geriatric care, a real estate developer interested in sustainable community planning for rural areas, an attorney who worked in estate law. Each conversation seemed designed to push me toward relinquishing control of my farm. One evening, while looking for aspirin in my bathroom cabinet, I found an unmarked pill bottle tucked behind my regular medications. The tablets inside looked similar to my blood pressure pills, but were slightly different in color. I had never seen them before, and certainly hadn't been prescribed anything new. I carefully sealed one in an envelope, marking the date and time I found them. That night, I realized I wasn't just facing disappointment in my son-in-law, I was likely fighting for my life. After discovering those strange pills, I became systematically cautious. I dumped my regular medications down the drain and got new prescriptions filled at a different pharmacy, keeping them hidden in a lockbox in the barn. I started pretending to take the pills left in my medicine cabinet, palming them instead and flushing them later. I bought a small notebook that I kept in my work jacket, documenting every suspicious incident with dates, times, and details. Warren brings coffee, insists I drink it all. Warren suggests I try new sleep aid, leaves bottle on nightstand. Warren discourages Pastor Jim's visit, says I'm too tired for company. I noticed how Warren would prepare my meals when Amanda wasn't around, always insisting on serving me himself. I began switching plates when he wasn't looking or finding reasons not to eat, claiming I'd already had a sandwich in town or wasn't feeling hungry. I started keeping energy bars and bottled water in my truck and work shed. The more I evaded his efforts, the more impatient Warren became. His friendly facade began showing cracks. The concerned suggestions turned into frustrated sighs and muttered comments. Stubborn old man became his favorite phrase, usually just loud enough for me to hear. My biggest challenge was hiding all this from Amanda. She adored Warren and believed he had our best interests at heart. When I tried suggesting that Warren seemed unusually interested in the farm's value, she laughed it off. He's in finance, Dad. Of course he thinks about assets and investments. Each night, alone in the house where Elaine and I had raised our daughter, I felt the walls closing in. I started sleeping with my bedroom door locked and a chair propped under the doorknob. Some nights I barely slept at all, listening for footsteps in the hallway. For weeks, I'd been experiencing unusual symptoms, excessive drowsiness in the evenings, confusion, occasionally slurred speech. At first, I attributed it to age and stress, but as the symptoms worsened, I grew suspicious of my evening tea, which Warren often prepared to help you sleep better, Rhett. I started pouring most of the tea into a potted plant when Warren wasn't looking, and within days, the plant withered and died. One evening, I managed to save a sample of the tea in a mason jar, sealing it tightly and hiding it in my lockbox. The next morning, I drove to see my old friend Dr. Jack Thompson in Charlottesville. Jack and I had gone to high school together, and he'd been our family physician until his retirement 5 years ago. I explained my situation, showed him my journal of incidents, and gave him the tea sample. Jack listened without interruption, his face growing grimmer by the minute. He sent the sample to a lab where his son worked, calling in a personal favor for a rush analysis. 3 days later, Jack called me to his home office. "Rhett," he said, sliding a paper across his desk. "This tea contains dangerously high levels of zolpidem, that's Ambien, a powerful sedative. The dose in this sample is at least 3 times the normal prescription strength. Taken regularly, it could cause memory loss, confusion, impaired coordination. Combined with your age and the fact that you don't actually need this medication, it could eventually lead to a fatal accident." I sat in stunned silence, the paper trembling in my hand. It was one thing to suspect Warren was trying to harm me, another entirely to have scientific proof. "You need to go to the police," Jack urged. "Not yet," I replied. "If I move too soon, with too little evidence, I'll lose Amanda forever. Warren will convince her I'm paranoid, maybe even mentally unfit. I need more proof." Jack reluctantly agreed to help monitor my health and document my symptoms. As I was leaving, he gripped my shoulder. "Be careful, old friend. If he's escalating from subtle manipulation to active drugging, there's no telling how far he'll go." His warning proved prophetic. A week later, I discovered Warren had installed a nanny cam in my living room, disguised as a clock radio. He was monitoring my movements, likely trying to determine why his drugging attempts weren't having the desired effect. The most frightening discovery came when I decided to search Warren's laptop one afternoon, when he and Amanda were at a charity event in Richmond. Warren had left his computer on the guest room desk, and by sheer luck, he hadn't logged out. What I found chilled me to the bone. He had been researching poisons that mimic natural causes of death, particularly heart attacks and strokes. His browser history showed dozens of searches: undetectable poisons, toxins that leave no trace, how to make death look like natural causes. I took photos of the screen with my cell phone, hands shaking so badly I had to steady them against the desk. Warren wasn't just trying to get me out of the way, he was actively planning my murder. Driving home, I nearly swerved off the road when a terrifying realization hit me. Warren was growing desperate. If subtle methods weren't working, how long before he tried something more direct? Amanda had always been a daddy's girl. After her mother died, our bond grew even stronger, or so I thought. We spoke daily, had Sunday dinners together, and she helped with the farm's bookkeeping as she had since high school. It broke my heart to realize that Warren had been systematically driving a wedge between us. I tried approaching the subject carefully, mentioning that Warren seemed unusually interested in my retirement plans. "He's just looking out for you," Amanda insisted, her brow furrowing in that stubborn way she'd had since childhood. "We both want what's best for you, Dad." "I've been feeling strange lately," I ventured, "especially after dinner at your place. Almost like I'm drugged." Amanda's expression changed instantly. "Dad, Warren mentioned you've been saying odd things, having memory lapses. Are you sleeping okay?" That's when it hit me. Warren had already been planting seeds, suggesting to Amanda that I was becoming confused, possibly experiencing early dementia. Every concern I raised would only seem to confirm Warren's narrative about my mental decline. "Never mind," I backpedaled. "Probably just need to cut back on the evening bourbon." Amanda's relieved smile told me everything I needed to know. She believed her husband over her father. Over the next few weeks, I noticed fewer visitors coming by the farm. My neighbor Tom Bell, who usually stopped in twice a week for coffee, hadn't been around. When I ran into him at the feed store, he seemed uncomfortable. "Haven't seen you much," I said casually. Tom shuffled his feet. "Well, Warren mentioned you've been needing more rest these days. Said not to bother you unless it's important. My church friends, my poker buddies, even the local farmers I'd known for decades, Warren had been systematically isolating me, controlling who could visit and when. To the community, he portrayed himself as the concerned son-in-law looking after the declining old farmer, while painting me as increasingly senile and frail. I decided to check my financial situation, growing concerned that Warren's manipulations might extend to my assets. I drove to my bank in Harrisonburg and asked for copies of my recent statements. The teller looked confused. "Mr. Calloway, your son-in-law picked up your statements last week. He said you weren't feeling well enough to come in." I insisted on seeing my account information anyway. Everything looked normal until I noticed a series of small transfers. 5,000 here, 8,000 there, moving from my main account to a joint account I shared with Amanda for farm expenses. I had never authorized these transfers. My next stop was my attorney's office. Frank Wilson had handled my family's legal matters for 30 years, and I trusted him implicitly. I brought the bank statements, my journal of suspicious incidents, and the laboratory report on the tea. Frank's normally impassive legal face showed genuine alarm as he reviewed the documents. "Rhett, this is deeply concerning," he said, leaning forward across his desk. "Have you checked your property records recently?" We pulled up the county records online, and there it was, a quitclaim deed transferring partial ownership of 50 acres to Amanda, supposedly signed by me 3 months earlier. The signature looked like mine, but I had never signed such a document. "That's a forgery," I said, my voice shaking with anger and fear. Frank nodded grimly. "I believe you, but proving it will be difficult. Warren is creating a paper trail that makes it look like you're voluntarily transferring assets to Amanda, probably as a first step toward taking everything. What about the drugging? The poisoning attempts? That's more serious, criminally speaking. But without catching him in the act, or getting a confession, it remains circumstantial. He could claim you mixed up your own medications, or that you're experiencing paranoid delusions." I slumped in my chair. "So he's going to get away with it." "I didn't say that," Frank replied, his voice hardening. "I said we need more evidence, definitive proof of his criminal intent. And Rhett," he added, "you need to consider why Warren is suddenly accelerating his plans." The answer came 2 days later, when Amanda let slip that Warren had investment troubles. Pressing gently, I learned that Warren had lost his job at the financial firm 3 months ago, something he'd hidden from both of us. He claimed to be working remotely, but in reality, he had been gambling on high-risk stock options, trying to recover losses. I did some digging through courthouse records and discovered Warren had taken out a second mortgage on their home. He was deeply in debt, possibly to dangerous people, and growing desperate. My farm, worth millions to developers, was his ticket to financial salvation. That night, I sat on my porch looking out over fields my family had tended for generations. The corn was knee-high, the evening sun casting long shadows across acres that Warren saw only as dollar signs. I thought about Amanda, how her love for Warren had blinded her to his true nature, how devastated she would be when the truth came out, because now I knew with certainty, either Warren would go to prison or I would end up dead. The next morning I drove to the hardware store in Staunton and purchased several small surveillance cameras disguised as smoke detectors, motion sensors, and power outlets. I had never considered myself tech-savvy, but the young clerk was helpful in selecting systems even an old farmer could install and operate. I strategically placed cameras in my kitchen, living room, and the guest bedroom where Warren often left his computer when visiting. I installed a dash cam in my truck and began carrying a voice-activated recorder in my shirt pocket. Every night, I downloaded the day's surveillance footage onto encrypted flash drives, making duplicates that I stored in a waterproof container buried under the floorboards of the barn. For additional security, I gave copies of my growing evidence file to Frank Wilson and Dr. Jack Thompson, with instructions to take everything to the authorities if anything happened to me. I updated my will with specific provisions that would prevent Warren from benefiting from my death, regardless of how it occurred. My next step was reconnecting with Dale Lawson, the county sheriff and an old fishing buddy. I invited him over for a beer, casually mentioning that I'd been having some concerns about my son-in-law's financial interests in my property. I didn't share my suspicions of poisoning, not yet, but I wanted Dale aware that something wasn't right. Been meaning to drop by anyway, Dale said, settling into a rocking chair on my porch. Heard from some folks in town that you've been having health problems. Memory issues. And who told them that? I asked. Warren's been talking to quite a few people. Very concerned about you living out here alone. I nodded slowly. Interesting. Because I feel fine, Dale. Better than I have in months, actually. Dale studied me carefully. Good to hear. You let me know if you need anything, Rhett. Anything at all. The conversation confirmed that Warren had been actively undermining my reputation in the community. I would need to tread carefully to avoid playing into his narrative about my supposed mental decline. A week later, my precautions proved vital. I was preparing to drive into town when I noticed a small puddle beneath my truck. Getting down on my hands and knees, I discovered brake fluid leaking from a line that showed clear signs of tampering. Someone had partially severed the brake line enough that it would likely fail completely once I was driving at highway speed. I checked my security cameras and found damning footage from the previous night. Warren, supposedly dropping by to check on me while Amanda worked late, sneaking out to my truck with tools from my own shed. The video clearly showed him working under the vehicle for several minutes. My hands trembled as I replayed the footage. Warren had graduated from passive poisoning to actively creating a situation that would almost certainly kill me. A brake failure on the winding mountain roads could easily send me over a guardrail, with no questions asked about the tragic accident. I called my mechanic to repair the brake line, telling him I must have damaged it driving over rough terrain. I didn't want to tip my hand yet, but I made sure to securely back up the video evidence. That evening, Warren called, his voice dripping with concern. Amanda mentioned you were going to drive into Charlottesville today. Car trouble kept you home? The casual inquiry sent chills down my spine. He was checking to see if his sabotage had worked. Just some routine maintenance, I replied, fighting to keep my voice steady. Better safe than sorry with these old trucks. Smart man, Warren said. Listen, why don't I pick you up tomorrow? We can have lunch in town. Maybe look at some retirement communities while we're out. Sounds great, I lied. After hanging up, I reviewed more surveillance footage and found something even more incriminating. Warren, alone in my house while I was working in the fields, making a phone call in my living room, unaware of the camera hidden in the bookshelf. It's taking longer than expected, Warren said to someone. The old man's tougher than he looks. No, I can't just wait for nature to take its course. The bank is breathing down my neck, and these guys aren't the patient type. Once he's gone, we'll sell the land to the developers and be set for life. Amanda won't like it at first, but she'll come around when she sees the money. Another month, tops, I promise. I now had Warren on video, explicitly discussing plans to eliminate me for financial gain. Combined with the brake tampering footage and the drugged tea evidence, I finally had enough to go to the authorities. But something held me back, Amanda. My daughter would be destroyed when Warren was arrested. Her marriage, her trust, her future all shattered in an instant. I needed Amanda to see the truth for herself, to understand what kind of man she had married. Only then could she begin to heal. My chance came sooner than expected. Warren invited me to Sunday dinner at their house, insisting I come despite my reluctance. "Amanda's making your favorite pot roast," he said. "She's worried about you." We both are. I arrived early, bringing a bottle of bourbon as a peace offering. Warren seemed pleased, pouring us each a glass, while Amanda finished preparing dinner. When Warren stepped outside to take a phone call, I quickly switched our glasses, suspecting he might have doctored mine. Sure enough, within minutes of returning and drinking from what he thought was my glass, Warren began looking disoriented. He excused himself, dumping the remainder of his drink in a potted plant, when he thought no one was watching. During dinner, I noticed Warren sprinkling something into my soup when Amanda went to answer the door. This was the moment described in my opening, the moment when Warren whispered that I was already near the end and my land would soon be his. When he called me a useless old man right in my own home. I pretended not to notice, but when Warren turned away, I pocketed the spoon he had used, careful to preserve whatever substance he had added to my food. Later, I would have it analyzed, adding to my mountain of evidence. Warren didn't realize he had just made his biggest mistake, yet one that would ultimately lead to his downfall. The following week, I began my most convincing performance. I started shuffling when Warren was around, speaking more slowly, appearing confused about simple matters. I called Amanda repeatedly, asking the same questions as if I couldn't remember her answers. I left the stove on once when they visited, creating a small but harmless incident that Warren quickly pointed out to Amanda with meaningful looks. "See what I mean?" he whispered, thinking I couldn't hear. "It's getting worse. We need to do something before he burns the house down." Amanda's eyes filled with worry as she watched me fumble with my coffee cup, deliberately spilling a little on my shirt. I hated causing her distress, but I needed Warren to believe his plan was working. The more confident he became, the more likely he would make a fatal mistake. My act was convincing enough that Amanda came to see me alone the next day, sitting me down at the kitchen table with that same worried expression her mother used to have. "Dad, I'm concerned about you," she began gently. "You haven't been yourself lately. Warren and I think it might be time to consider some options for your care." It broke my heart to see her genuine concern, knowing it was based on Warren's manipulations. I wanted to tell her everything then and there, but I knew she wouldn't believe me without irrefutable proof. Warren had spent too long crafting his narrative of my decline. "What kind of options?" I asked, purposely sounding defensive and confused. "There are some nice assisted living communities near us. Or we could hire someone to stay here with you. Warren even suggested we could build a small apartment for you on our property." I scoffed, letting genuine anger seep into my response. "So Warren can watch me day and night? No thank you. This is my home, Amanda. I'm not leaving." "Dad, please. Has Warren been going through my medicine cabinet? Moving things around in my house?" I demanded, deciding to test her reaction. A flicker of surprise crossed her face. "He's just trying to help organize things for you. Make sure you're taking your medications properly. Did he tell you he's been giving me special tea at night? Tea that makes me feel strange?" Amanda sighed, squeezing my hand. "Dad," Dr. Brewer said, "confusion and paranoia can be symptoms of early dementia. It's nobody's fault." Dr. Brewer? I'd never met any Dr. Brewer. Warren must have fabricated conversations with a doctor who didn't exist, or perhaps paid someone to pose as my physician when speaking to Amanda. I realized then how thoroughly Warren had crafted his deception. Any accusation I made would only reinforce the image of me as paranoid and confused. I needed to change tactics. "You're right," I said, forcing my voice to sound resigned. "Maybe I have been forgetting things. It's frightening, Amanda." Her expression softened with relief and sympathy. "We'll figure it out together, Dad. I promise." "Could you do something for me?" I asked, making myself sound vulnerable. "Could you come by tomorrow? Just you? I want to show you some things in the barn. Things about the farm you should know." "In case." I let my voice trail off. Amanda squeezed my hand. "Of course, Dad. I'll come in the morning while Warren's at his meeting in Richmond. After she left, I prepared carefully for her visit, gathering select pieces of evidence that even the most loyal wife couldn't ignore. I didn't want to overwhelm her with everything at once, but I needed to plant the first seeds of doubt. When Amanda arrived the next morning, I took her to the barn and showed her my mother's antique jewelry box, where I'd hidden the lab results from the tea samples. I've been feeling strange after drinking tea at your house, I explained. So I had it tested by Dr. Thompson. You remember Jack? Amanda nodded slowly, taking the report with reluctance. As she read the results, her face paled. This says there's sleeping medication in the tea, she whispered. A dangerous amount. Warren always insists I drink it. Says it will help me sleep. Amanda shook her head. There must be some mistake. Warren would never. Has he been telling people I'm getting confused? Having memory problems? Her silence was answer enough. Amanda, I'm not confused. I'm not imagining things. Something isn't right, and I'm afraid. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in my daughter's eyes. The blind trust in her husband wavered, if only slightly. It was enough for now. I need time to think, she said finally. I can't. Take the report, I urged. Show it to another doctor if you don't believe Jack. But please, be careful what you say to Warren. After Amanda left, I checked my surveillance cameras and saw something that made my blood run cold. While Amanda and I had been in the barn, Warren's car had pulled into my driveway. He had told Amanda he was going to Richmond, but instead, he had followed her to my farm. The footage showed him watching from his car, then driving away when Amanda emerged from the barn. Warren now knew that Amanda and I had spoken privately. He would be suspicious, possibly desperate. I had to move quickly before he escalated again. That evening, Amanda called me, her voice hushed and shaky. Dad, I found something in Warren's office, she whispered. I used the spare key to his filing cabinet. There are documents about the farm, about your health, notes about your medication. It's not good, Dad. Amanda, listen carefully, I said, heart pounding. Do you have access to his private safe? The one in his closet? How do you know about that? She asked, surprised. I've been paying attention. Do you know the combination? I've seen him open it. I think I remember the numbers. I need you to look inside, but you can't let Warren know you suspect anything. It's important, Amanda. It could be dangerous if he realizes you're investigating him. There was a long pause. You really think Warren is trying to harm you? For the farm? I think you need to see the evidence yourself, I answered carefully. And Amanda? I have a plan, but I'll need your help. Can you meet me tomorrow at the old fishing spot? Come alone, and make sure Warren thinks you're going shopping in Charlottesville. Okay, Dad, she said, her voice stronger now. Tomorrow at 10. As I hung up, I felt both relief and apprehension. Amanda was finally beginning to see the truth, but we were entering the most dangerous phase of all. Warren, cornered and exposed, would be more desperate than ever. I checked the locks on my doors and windows, placed a chair against my bedroom door, and kept my shotgun within reach as I tried to sleep. Tomorrow would determine whether I reclaimed my life and saved my daughter from a predator, or whether Warren would eliminate the final obstacle to his plans. I was gambling everything on Amanda's love for me being stronger than her loyalty to Warren. As I drifted off to sleep, I prayed I had made the right choice. The old fishing spot was a small pond on the eastern edge of my property, hidden by a stand of oak trees. Amanda and I had spent countless hours there when she was growing up, catching bass and bluegill while sharing stories and dreams. It seemed fitting that this place of happy memories would now serve as the setting for our most difficult conversation. Amanda arrived looking exhausted, dark circles under her red-rimmed eyes suggesting she hadn't slept. She carried a large envelope clutched tightly against her chest. I found these in Warren's safe, she said without preamble, handing me the envelope. Inside were documents that confirmed my worst fears. Falsified medical reports, diagnosing me with dementia, legal papers prepared to declare me mentally incompetent, and most damning of all, preliminary agreements with Meridian Development Corporation for the sale of my farm documents dated 3 months in the future. He's been planning this for at least a year, Amanda said, her voice hollow. There are emails going back 18 months, discussing the development potential of the farm. Her voice broke. He has a life insurance policy on you. A large one. He took it out 6 months ago. I put my arm around her shoulders as she began to sob. I'm so sorry, Dad. I should have seen it. I should have known. Warren is very convincing, I said gently. He fooled me too at first. Amanda wiped her eyes, straightening her shoulders in that determined way she'd had since childhood. What do we do now? Go to the police? We will, I assured her. But first, I want Warren to reveal himself publicly. I want everyone to see who he really is. So there's no doubt, no way for him to twist the narrative. I explained my plan. I would pretend to have a heart attack, serious enough to convince Warren his efforts had succeeded, but not so severe as to require hospitalization. During the crisis, Amanda would search Warren's computer and phone for additional evidence. Then, I would arrange a family gathering to discuss my estate planning given my failing health, creating the perfect stage for Warren's exposure. It's risky, Amanda said, concern etching her face. What if he realizes it's a trap? That's why I need your help. Warren trusts you completely. He won't suspect you're working with me. After finalizing the details of our plan, Amanda returned home to Warren, playing the role of the dutiful, unsuspecting wife. I spent the next few days gathering the last pieces of evidence and contacting key people who needed to be present for the final confrontation. 3 days later, I called Amanda in apparent distress, complaining of chest pains and difficulty breathing. She and Warren rushed over, finding me slumped in my recliner, clutching my chest convincingly. Warren's expression was a disturbing mixture of concern and anticipation, the look of a man seeing his plans finally coming to fruition. Should we call an ambulance? Amanda asked, her acting skills impressive as she projected panic. No, Warren said quickly. Let's drive him to the hospital ourselves. It'll be faster. Warren helped me to their car, his arm around my shoulders in a show of support that made my skin crawl. As they drove me to the emergency room, I caught Warren checking his watch repeatedly, perhaps calculating how quickly he could begin liquidating my assets once I was gone. At the hospital, doctors found nothing seriously wrong, attributing my symptoms to indigestion and stress. Warren couldn't hide his disappointment, as the doctor prescribed only rest and antacids. Meanwhile, Amanda had executed her part perfectly, using Warren's absence to access his laptop and forward incriminating emails and documents to our lawyer. The following Sunday, I invited everyone to my farm for what I described as an important family discussion. Warren, believing this was my way of announcing plans to move to assisted living, eagerly agreed to help arrange the gathering. What he didn't know was that I had also invited Sheriff Dale Lawson, my attorney Frank Wilson, Dr. Jack Thompson, and several neighbors and friends who had been deceived by Warren's lies about my mental state. The day arrived clear and warm, a perfect late spring afternoon. I set up chairs in the living room, positioning Warren front and center where everyone could see his reactions. As guests arrived, Warren played the concerned son-in-law brilliantly, greeting people with handshakes and sympathetic smiles, whispering about how brave I was being about my condition. Once everyone was seated, I stood to address the group. Warren leaned forward expectantly, no doubt anticipating my announcement that I would be selling the farm and moving into care. I've asked you all here because there's something important I need to share, I began, my voice strong and clear. Something that affects not just me and my family, but potentially others in our community as well. Warren nodded encouragingly, his fake smile firmly in place. For the past year, I've been the target of a systematic attempt to undermine my health, destroy my reputation, and steal my property, I continued, watching Warren's smile freeze on his face. Someone has been drugging me, tampering with my vehicle, isolating me from friends, and spreading lies about my mental capacity. Today, I'm going to show you exactly who that someone is and provide irrefutable proof of their actions. Warren's face drained of color as I methodically laid out the evidence, starting with the lab reports from the drug tea and moving through the surveillance videos showing him tampering with my truck's brakes. I presented financial documents showing his unauthorized transfers from my accounts and the forged deed transferring part of my property to Amanda. Warren has told many of you that I'm suffering from dementia, I said, looking around the room at the shocked faces of my friends and neighbors. That I'm confused, paranoid, unable to care for myself. He's done this to establish a narrative that would allow him to control my assets after my conveniently timed natural death. I saved the most damning evidence for last: the poisoned spoon from the soup incident, which Dr. Thompson had analyzed and found to contain a lethal dose of digitalis, a heart medication that in large amounts can cause cardiac arrest that mimics natural heart failure. Throughout my presentation, Warren sat rigid, his expressions cycling between disbelief, rage, and calculation, like a cornered animal seeking escape. Several times he tried to interrupt, but the weight of evidence silenced even his smooth tongue. "This is absurd," he finally spluttered when I finished. "Red is clearly experiencing paranoid delusions. I've been trying to help him ask anyone. These so-called proofs are fabrications, manipulations. The lab results don't lie, Warren," Dr. Thompson said firmly. "Neither do the video recordings or financial records." Warren turned to Amanda, desperation in his eyes. "Amanda, you know I would never harm your father. This is all a misunderstanding, a sick old man's fantasies. Tell them." The room fell silent as Amanda slowly stood, her face pale but determined. "I found your files, Warren. The development plans for Dad's farm, the falsified medical reports, the life insurance policy." Warren's face contorted with rage as he realized his wife had betrayed him. "You went through my private papers? My safe? How dare you? How dare I?" Amanda's voice rose in disbelief. "You tried to murder my father for his land, and you're angry that I looked in your safe?" Warren lunged to his feet, his carefully constructed facade crumbling completely. "Your precious father was going to die anyway," he shouted. "Why should those acres sit useless when they could set us up for life? Developers have been begging to build there for years. Do you have any idea how much money we're talking about? Millions. And your father would rather see it all go to waste than secure our future." Sheriff Lawson stepped forward. "I think we've heard enough, Warren. You need to come with me." Warren's eyes darted around the room, seeking an ally and finding none. In a final desperate move, he lunged toward me, his hands outstretched as if to grab my throat. "You ruined everything, you stubborn old fool." Several men moved to restrain him, but Amanda reached him first, stepping between us and slapping Warren with such force that he staggered backward. "Don't you dare touch my father," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "You've done enough damage." As Sheriff Lawson handcuffed Warren and led him away, the room erupted in a mixture of shocked conversations and expressions of support for me and Amanda. Friends who had believed Warren's lies about my mental state apologized profusely. Neighbors offered help with the farm. Through it all, Amanda stood by my side, her hand gripping mine as if she might never let go again. Warren's final words as he was pushed into the sheriff's car echoed his true character. "You'll regret this, old man. That land was my ticket out. Mine." As the patrol car disappeared down the driveway, I felt a strange mixture of relief, vindication, and profound sadness. The nightmare was over, but its effects would linger for a long time, especially for my daughter, who would have to rebuild her life from the ashes of Warren's betrayal. The months following Warren's arrest brought both healing and challenges. The district attorney charged him with attempted murder, fraud, elder abuse, and a host of related crimes. The evidence was so overwhelming that Warren eventually accepted a plea deal rather than face a trial where the full extent of his actions would be made public. He was sentenced to 20 years in state prison, with no possibility of parole for at least 15 years. For Amanda, the aftermath was devastating. Beyond the shock and betrayal, she had to endure whispers and pitying glances from people in town. Some even suggested she must have known about Warren's plans, a cruel insinuation that added to her pain. She filed for divorce immediately, but untangling their finances proved complicated, as Warren had accumulated gambling debts under both their names. She moved back to the farmhouse with me, taking the bedroom she had grown up in. Many nights I would hear her crying softly, mourning not just the man she thought she had married, but also her dreams of the future they had planned together. She blamed herself repeatedly for not seeing through Warren's deception. "I brought him into our lives," she said one evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset. "I let him get close to you. I believed him over my own father." "Warren fooled a lot of people," I reminded her. "He was exceptionally good at manipulation." "That's not your fault, but I should have known," she insisted. "There were signs. The way he always asked about the farm's value. How he encouraged me to convince you to sell acres for retirement funds. I just thought he was being practical. That's what made his deception so effective. Everything seemed reasonable on the surface. He built his lies on foundations of half-truths. Amanda started seeing a therapist in Charlottesville, driving there twice weekly to work through her feelings of guilt and betrayal. Slowly, I began to see glimpses of my daughter returning her laugh one afternoon as we tried to corral an escaped calf, her excitement when the summer's first tomatoes ripened on the vine. The community rallied around us in ways that touched me deeply. Neighbors who had believed Warren's lies about my mental decline made special efforts to visit regularly, bringing casseroles, offering help with farm chores, or just sitting for a spell to share news and gossip. My poker buddies resumed our weekly games at my kitchen table. Pastor Jim stopped by every Sunday after church to share a piece of his wife's legendary apple pie. One unexpected blessing came from this ordeal. Amanda discovered a genuine love for farming. Having grown up on the land, she had always appreciated it, but had never shown interest in the daily operations. Now, as we worked side by side mending fences, checking crops, and tending livestock, she began asking questions about soil composition, crop rotation, and sustainable farming practices. I never understood how much this land means, she confessed one evening, as we watched fireflies rise over the eastern field. Not just as property, but as a living legacy. I feel connected to it now, in a way I never did before. 6 months after Warren's arrest, I met with Frank Wilson to revise my will and establish a proper estate plan. I created a trust that would keep the farm intact after my death, with Amanda as primary trustee. We added provisions to establish a program that would help young farmers get started, offering portions of our acreage as affordable leases, along with mentoring and equipment sharing. This way, I explained to Amanda, the land stays whole, but still benefits the community. No developers will ever turn it into a subdivision. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. Mom would love that idea. She would, I agreed. And so would my father and grandfather. This land was never meant to be just an asset to cash in. It's a responsibility we pass down. The most profound healing came when Amanda helped organize a community harvest festival on the farm that fall. We opened the barn for a dance, set up tables under oak trees, strung with lights, and invited everyone in the county. The turnout was overwhelming. Families bringing dishes to share, local musicians playing fiddles and banjos, children running through the same fields where Amanda had played as a girl. As I watched my daughter laughing with neighbors, confident and at peace for the first time since Warren's betrayal, I felt a sense of gratitude that surprised me. The ordeal we had endured was terrible, but it had brought Amanda back to her roots and deepened our bond in ways I couldn't have imagined. One evening the following spring, as we sat watching the sunset from rocking chairs on the porch, Amanda broke a comfortable silence. "You know what I've been thinking about lately?" she asked. "What's that?" "How close we came to losing all this. Not just the farm, but you, our family history, everything that matters." I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. "Warren thought this land was just an asset," she continued. "Something to sell for cash. He never understood that its real value isn't in dollars, it's in the memories it holds, the generations it connects. Most valuable things can't be measured in money," I agreed. "I'm thinking about starting that young farmers program we discussed," she said, her eyes bright with purpose. "There are so many people who want to farm but can't afford land. We have more than we can work ourselves. It seems right to share it." In that moment, I felt a profound sense of peace. Warren had wanted to destroy our legacy for quick profit, but his actions had inadvertently strengthened it. My daughter now understood the true value of our heritage and was committed to preserving it for future generations. The painful journey we had endured contained an unexpected blessing. It had shown us both what truly matters. Not wealth or property, but connection to the land, to our history, and to each other. Warren had seen only dollar signs when he looked at our farm. He never understood that its true worth lay in something that couldn't be sold or stolen, the sense of belonging to something larger than ourselves, a continuous thread connecting past, present, and future. That evening, watching the last golden light fade over fields my family had tended for generations, fields that would now continue under Amanda's care, I felt profound gratitude. Sometimes the worst betrayals can lead to unexpected blessings. In trying to destroy us, Warren had ultimately strengthened our resolve and clarified our purpose. The land would remain undivided, our legacy intact, our future secure. I think about Warren sometimes, sitting in his prison cell, and I feel a complex mixture of anger, pity, and ultimately, gratitude. His betrayal nearly cost me my life, but it also returned my daughter to me and to the land where she belongs. He tried to poison me for my property, but instead, he reminded us both of what truly matters, not the monetary value of land, but the invaluable connections it nurtures between people across generations. Have you ever had to defend something precious against someone who couldn't understand its true value? I hope my story reminds you to cherish the intangible treasures in your life, the relationships, traditions, and connections that give life meaning beyond material worth. If this story touched you, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts. And if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with others who might appreciate this reminder of what truly matters. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you always recognize and protect what's truly valuable in your own life.